This video is sponsored by Cometeer. This is the Meraki Espresso Machine. You might have seen it before because their marketing strategy seems to have been something similar to... It's a new all-in-one espresso machine that launched on Kickstarter with a backer price of $1,200 and an MSRP of around $1,800. At the time of this recording, the campaign has reached nearly $1.4 million from over 1,200 backers. Timemore, which is known for their excellent grinders and accessories, is a strategic partner and investor for Meraki, sharing the supply chain and design of the grinder element for this machine. The machine packs a lot of interesting tech and features, but does suffer in the overall build quality department, and while this is technically a prototype unit, it is nearly representative of the final production version. I was given a changelog with notes on what will be addressed for final production, and I'll also be sure to convey any relevant bits throughout this video. So I'm going to share my thoughts on having used this machine every day for about 3 weeks, the pros, cons, workflow, and overall whether or not I think it's worth it, and hopefully my experiences here help you make an informed decision if you're in the market for this machine. Starting off with the specs, I want to say it's a primarily 5-part espresso machine, almost reminiscent of a castle in design. The rear features an easily visible and removable water tank with a 2-liter capacity. The left side has the Timemore designed conical burr coffee grinder featuring 38mm conical burrs. The center group head features a very quiet rotary pump design with a flat surface for NFC chip enabled recipes, or what Meraki is calling coffee sense. Front and center, you have the circular touchscreen display where you can change the different settings of the machine, and yes, connect yet another device to your home Wi-Fi network. Below that, you have the paddle, similar to the La Marzocco Linea Mini, which mostly acts as an on-off switch and not a flow control paddle. Underneath all that, you have the actual group head where you would lock in the included 58mm portafilter. On the right side, you have the steam wand tower, which does have its own boiler since this is a dual boiler machine, and that consists of this large, visually GS3 style steam wand on a ball joint, allowing it to rotate relatively freely. Similar to the main group head, you have a paddle to actuate the steam, again just as an on-off switch with no adjustability during active use. And finally, the 5th piece of this castle puzzle is the bottom drip tray, which also includes 2 built-in scales, one for the grinder and one for the brew group. A lot of thoughtful elements of design can be seen going into this machine, but its build quality and software hinders it from being an easy recommendation at this point in time. But with each element of the machine now identified, let's actually talk about how it performs. There's not much to say on the water tank. It's straightforward, mostly transparent with this rigid design, it's easy to see and know when to refill, and offers a rounded design much like the rest of the machine's aesthetic. It is easy to install and remove, and the lid does sit firmly enough with a silicone gasket seal, although it is worth noting that both the lids for the hopper and the water tank will be further improved for final production. The entire tank does come off of the machine for easy cleaning and refilling. On the left side, you have the Timemore designed conical burr grinder, which is stepped on this model, but will become stepless for the production version. It's quite a nice compact design, and it's actually pretty quiet as well. The grind adjustment mechanism is easy to use with this sliding paddle, a trend throughout this machine, and the entire hopper can also be removed with a little twist that automatically locks in all the beans, which is a nice feature. Underneath the grind chute, you have a base with a built-in scale and a magnetic dosing cup that fits over a 58mm portafilter perfectly. This is an excellent integration of grind-by-weight technology that doesn't require a separate $400 smart scale. The grinder itself performs very well, and the Timemore designed conical burrs are excellent for medium roasts and more chocolatey notes, but even perform quite well at decent clarity for some lighter roast shots. It doesn't compare to using a dedicated large set of flat burrs, but for an integrated grinder, I am very satisfied with these results. Moving over to the right side of the machine, you have the steam wand, which has a separate half-liter sized boiler with a very powerful steam wand, but a rather bulky design. The ball joint here is a little bit stiff, but still moves relatively freely enough, and I was told it will be improved for final production. The paddle to actuate the steam is a little flimsy feeling, and I hope it will be improved further. However, it does have a slight tactile bump towards the end to know when you've reached the actuation point, which is nice from a user experience perspective. Honestly though, I would like the paddle to be removed altogether, and maybe incorporating some sort of side lever would be cool, but that's just my preference. My absolute favorite integration here is the built-in temperature probe at the tip of the steam wand, which is just a fantastic idea. I'm hoping it actually holds up across long-term usage, but in the time I've used this machine, it's been very cool to actually see the milk temperature straight out of the fridge to steaming to that perfect 130 to 140 Fahrenheit range. On this machine, any milk or liquid residue getting into the rounded crevices and corners are ever so slightly more annoying to clean. The drip tray here comprises the width of the machine and actually is quite different from some other drip trays I've used in the past. It has a 3-piece design to it, which I found almost acts like a splash guard, preventing much water from being splashed back when you purge the steam wand. This machine also has that classic bright plastic piece that floats when the tray fills up with too much wastewater, which generally I don't like because aesthetically it cheapens the machine, but does have its function. Interestingly enough, the top surface of the drip tray is the largest metal component found on the machine apart from the group head. Other components here remain made of plastic. Finally, the central tower, or what I like to consider the command tower of the machine, comprising of the brains, touchscreen display, and the group head. Firstly, the group head here is an aluminum alloy which will be later changed to a stainless steel for production, which is a welcomed improvement. The included portafilter is fine as well, nothing to rave about, but features a nice wooden handle and a metal end cap accent, which is much nicer than the typical plastic handled portafilters. The plastic paddle here acts as an on-off style switch and does not have any flow control capabilities, though that would have been a very cool integration to see. However, the paddle itself does feel cheap and doesn't have the best tolerances, and I'm hoping that it will also be improved for production. That being said, you really don't need to use the paddle at all for both steam or brewing, since everything can be controlled from the touchscreen display. I found the display to generally be intuitive to use and fairly responsive, and it even has a small built-in speaker for a tiny jingle when the machine is turned on or off. From here, you can control the grind weight output, and depending on where you have your grind size set to, it even tells you if you're grinding relatively coarser or finer. You can also control your brew by weight output, and when you go to actually brew, it tells you if you're pulling something more like a ristretto or a regular espresso, which is a really neat touch. The menu is a little confusing at first, trying to figure out what icons do what, and on this machine you can connect it to Wi-Fi. Yes, I know, not another Wi-Fi enabled device, but hopefully that leads to meaningful software updates over time, because right now, this machine definitely needs it. From some simple text misspellings to just straight up wrong time zones being used, even on Wi-Fi, the software could definitely do with a little refresh. I think a big opportunity for one area to improve on is to sort of ditch the Coffee Sense integration altogether, which is essentially just an NFC tag that tells the machine what beans you're using, the flavor notes, and some recommended settings, and doesn't actually change the programming of the machine. You can also set a time for the machine to wake up and start preheating, although it should be noted that the machine does go to sleep in about 15 minutes or so, which is a really short period of time, and I'm hoping that this is something that can also be adjusted via a future software update. I found that about 30 minutes is the most ideal amount of heat up time, although you can certainly get away with a little bit less, since there is such a small amount of metal elements to the group head, much of the heat is not being siphoned away. From here, you can also adjust your water temperature and choose to dispense some hot water, which conveniently can be used to quickly brew a cup of coffee from the sponsor of today's video, Cometeer. I first reviewed Cometeer about 3 years ago, and in that time have since moved to 3 different apartments, adopted a dog, got engaged, and changed my coffee setup dozens of times. One consistent element throughout all of these changes has been Cometeer, always stocked in the freezer and ready to go, almost like a luxurious hotel with a wide range of hotel room coffees, but better, fresher, and faster to brew. With Cometeer, brewing a cup of delicious coffee only requires some hot water, a cup, and any one of the flash frozen at peak freshness capsules of delicious coffee concentrate from a variety of world-renowned roasters. Get 15 free cups today when you sign up using the link in the description down below, or by visiting cometeer.com/Chris. Once again, thanks to Cometeer for sponsoring this video. From this command center, you can also review things like the cleaning instructions with some photos and guidelines, which is also a nice touch. The workflow here on this machine is excellent for a beginner or someone that doesn't want to deal with the annoyance of scales, but still wants that level of consistency. Having both grind by weight, brew by weight, and steaming with a temperature probe is an incredibly nice quality of life feature set to have. The machine also includes a plastic tool tray, tamper, spinning distributor, and a few other bits which I found are fine and nice to have, but I much prefer using my own needle distributor and my own tamper anyway. The tool tray itself has a nice design following the same rounded aspect of the machine, but it is a bit lightweight and therefore a little bit slidey. It definitely needs some silicone or rubber feet underneath. I haven't tested a huge volume of drinks back to back, but doing up to 4 or so in a row have not given me any issues, and the consistency has been excellent. The scale itself is designed cleverly to have its own drainage and silicone piece for any excess water, so as to not damage the scales itself, and the densely perforated cover prevents any splashing and keeps the surface relatively dry. So with all that being said, who is this machine for, and do I think it's personally worth it? The Meraki all-in-one machine is really nicely thought out with a truly unique design from the Chrome E61 boxes on the market. It's relatively small and compact and features all the tools needed for a beginner, has scales built in, brew by weight technology, grind by weight technology, strong steam wand with a temperature probe, and comes in at under $2,000 at MSRP. Aesthetically, it's definitely unique and sticks out a bit in a kitchen as an unusual looking appliance, but the matte black finish is a nice change from a chrome box. It has a really compelling set of features that I only feel are dragged down by some software issues, which can be fixed, and overall build quality, which is unfortunately mostly plastic. Personally, I'd be willing to to pay up to maybe $2,400 to $2,500 if they could have really nailed a full metal housing rather than plastic pretty much everywhere. Given the shape and rounded design, I'd imagine it would be both difficult and incredibly costly to get a full CNC'd aluminum housing, but I'd hope there's some in between where this can feel more premium with a justifiably higher price tag. But at the $1,800 MSRP price point, you're comparing this machine to the likes of something like the Breville Oracle Jet, which they even kind of hint at with the silhouette featured on the Kickstarter page. And as with any new company, it's also important to be aware of long-term after-sales support, which is currently unknown. And yes, you could get a capable and cheaper machine and possibly a better grinder separately for the same or even less money that would perform better, but to have all of this built into one product and nice quality of life enhancements gives it a strong value proposition. I think the perfect audience for a machine like this might be somebody like my parents, who will be receiving this machine from me once I'm finished with this review. With a pretty simple to use one tap to grind and one tap to brew, I think they'll finally be able to enjoy making morning lattes consistently without the use of scales and measuring times, and maybe they can finally shelve their old espresso machine that's been collecting dust. So that is going to be my take on the Meraki Timemore espresso machine, and I'm interested to see where they go in the future and if they release other future products. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you learned something new, and I'll see you in the next one.